Partners in Ministry, a presentation of Josiah White's Quakerdale Foundation, dedicated to growing ministry support networks, introducing people to a cause that connects with their heart, bringing hope and encouragement to our communities as we seek together to serve as Christ served.
Welcome to Partners in Ministry. I'm your host, Dan Smith, and today I'll be talking with Lyle Miller. Lyle is a stewardship consultant for Everence Financial. In this interview, we're going to discuss Charitable Remainder Trusts. What are they? What do they do? Who would benefit from them? Who should avoid them? And how can I get started? Well, welcome, Lyle, and thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Dan. It is great to be alongside you in this conversation.
Today, we're going to have a really interesting discussion about Charitable Remainder Trusts. So to get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about just exactly what a trust is?
Sure, I'll do that with, of course, the disclaimer that I'm not an attorney, right? So, but at the same time, we do work with trusts on a regular basis here. So a trust really, on its most simple terms, is a legal document that ensures that your assets will be managed according to your wishes, both during and also potentially after a person's lifetime.
Okay. And how is a charitable remainder trust different than I think it's what called a unit trust, or?
Sure. Yeah. So those two words, charitable and remainder, are really, what's driving that. So a charitable trust suggests that there is going to be a gift to charity at some point in the process. Okay. The remainder talks about when that gift will happen. And so the remainder means that the gift to charity will happen at the end of the trust. Whatever is left in the trust will go to charity. So that's a distinction between that and a charitable lead trust, for example, where the charitable gift happens up front. Those are very specialized and aren't used a great deal. But so the charitable remainder trust is going to be a device, a technique, if you will, that allows a person to make a gift to charity at a later point.
Okay. So
that can be used that can be used in a number of different ways. I mean, trusts in general can be used in a lot of different ways. I mean, they can be part of estate planning. They can be ways to preserve wealth for minor children or for children with if a family member has special needs, et cetera. And so then there's this specialized version of doing this that's called the charitable trust.
Okay. All right. So kind of step us through this thing from beginning to end, would you, so we get an idea of just how this all happens?
Sure. Yeah, I'm going to share several slides here that will do that. There we go. So this is just kind of a very high level overview of a charitable trust, what it looks like. So on the left, you have the person, and step number one is that they will make a gift of cash or stocks, bonds, commodities, farm commodities, real estate. Most often, it's a gift that has appreciated some in value. And so you'll see the stocks and bonds there. The real estate, in our experience, has been a very common way of funding a charitable trust. I think during the calendar year 2022, for example, I think the Everence Foundation received between 20 and 25 gifts of real estate, many of them ones that funded unit trusts for people. And so then the asset from that trust will be sold, and that because there's going to be a gift of charity eventually, up front, the donor will receive an income tax deduction. And then over the course of their lifetime, and this is the most common way of structuring these, I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but over the course of a person's lifetime or a couple's lifetime, there will be a stream of income that they will receive. And then when they pass away, then whatever is left in that trust will go to the charities of their choice, whether that's a charitable entity like Quakerdale, a person's congregation, the camp, the college that they were supportive of, et cetera. That's kind of the overall snapshot. I'll also highlight a couple of slides here that are actually based on a real life example that we were working with someone in the past year. Now, I have to say, as we go into this, there may be some folks who are listening who are saying, I'm really looking forward to some nuts and bolts, diving into the weeds kind of slides. And for you folks, we've got a couple slides. There may be some folks who are saying, I sure hope he doesn't go into too much weeds and details. And for you folks, there's only 2 slides, right? So let me just jump into these here very, very quickly. So this describes a person who was making a gift of farmland that was worth about $640,000, right? And so that farmland, when it was sold, created this trust that provided them with a stream of income of maybe $32,000 or more over the course of lifetime. Now, along the way, that $640,000 will be invested, and assuming that we're able to invest that in a way that it actually grows even after paying that $32,000 of income, the reality is that based on these 2 donors' life expectancy, that trust may actually grow even more, maybe 780,000, 800,000, perhaps even $1 million if, depending on how the return happens or the length of the lifespan of that person. So here's then a little bit further into the weeds as to why these can be really helpful. On the left, you'll see that we started with this property that was worth $640,000. This farm couple had originally purchased that farmland for a little over $100,000. So if they were to sell that property, they would have to pay capital gains on $536,000 worth of gain. And that could have literally cost them $100,000 or $200,000 in taxes, depending on what their tax bracket is. So that's one of the huge advantages of this charitable trust, why it works so well with assets that have appreciated greatly. And then secondly, because there's going to be a charitable gift, on the very end, there will also be a tax deduction of a portion of the value. It's a portion of the value because the gift doesn't happen until a lot later, right? But you'll see that there's 2 very, very significant tax advantages up front that can be helpful for a person. And then in this case, another reason that was really attractive about this is that the person is going to receive about $32,000 a year in their income. And in this case, they had only been receiving about $16,000 a year in rent on this farmland. So the reality is that for this couple, it also actually significantly increased the amount of income that they're going to receive. And then without getting too far into the weeds, I'll just say that the way that income is received also has some tax advantages along the way. And then finally, as I said, there will be a gift to charity. So again, if the the investment would earn 6% over time, and it's paying out 5%, which is a common amount, the reality is that $640,000 very likely will grow to an even larger gift to charity. As well as there's sort of the intangible benefit of it just is a much easier process for heirs to manage, because the heirs won't have to go through the process of selling land to create a gift to charity or things like that. So there's those advantages as well. There. A couple of other things that I'll just highlight about these is that, I use sort of the standard, most common way that these are set up. But the reality is that there are some of the benefits that I've highlighted there is that the donor is going to receive income for life. The income often increases. There's tax deductions and tax advantages on a couple of ways. And then one of the things, too, that people often find value when working with Everence is just knowing that trust is going to be responsibly invested. So, avoiding tobacco and gambling and pornography and a lot of other things that could be a whole discussion on their own. And then similarly, though I talked about this as with this fairly simple structure, there may be people who would say, wow, that sounds great, Lyle, but I can't make a gift of $640,000. Well, a person can also make a partial gift, a quarter interest of it or a half interest of it, et cetera. For manageability purposes, it really probably needs to be at least $100,000 there. But so that's one of the things. The donor actually has flexibility in the income rate that they choose. I use the example of, a husband and wife, for example, but it actually can support up to 8 different lives, or even a class of people like a person's grandkids. And the way and where that's significant is that it actually can support heirs after a person's death. And then finally, another piece in terms of the flexibility is that a person can make additional contributions to it down the road. So apologies for getting into the weeds a little bit, but you can just sort of get a sense of that there's just a huge amount of flexibility that can really be shaped according to what the donor is seeking to accomplish.
Sure. At first I thought, boy, this sounds an awful lot like a charitable gift annuity. But then the more that you got there, I thought, oh, no, wait a minute. There are a whole lot of other features and flexibilities that are not in a charitable gift annuity that you do have in the trust. Is that right?
Exactly. They both, they're similar in certain ways in terms of providing a stream of income and benefiting charity at a later point. They're different in other ways in terms of the charitable trust, providing a little more flexibility in terms of what you can put into it, the choosing the income rate, et cetera, the ability to add to it. The gift annuity, one of the things that's really exciting for people is that it's just a fixed income. They know how much money they're going to receive, and it can be started with a lot less money, typically like $10,000. So
Sure.
They each have their place and they can work alongside of each other really, really well.
So we work with basically the same type of people in same kind of situations. Who would benefit the most from taking a look at this charitable remainder?
Well, number one, there needs to be charitable intent, right? And so the people who are going to benefit the most are those that want to make a gift. I mean, the reality is there are actually sometimes when it makes financial sense to do this from just a dollars and cents standpoint. But the reality is most of the people that we want to work with and that use these are folks who are driven by the idea of being generous, right? So that's one piece. A second piece is it's often works really, really well for folks who have an asset that they would like to gift, that they no longer need. I named farmland, rental property, et cetera. And especially when it's appreciated fairly significantly in value. And so selling it would provide a real tax challenge for them. And so this can be really, really advantageous there. And then again, I mean, it's great for somebody who would like to transfer that asset that they've needed to manage into something that is much easier to manage for them. They don't have to worry about finding a tenant, doing maintenance on, fixing a bathroom in a rental property, et cetera. These are typically a lot easier to manage. So they work really great in those contexts.
Sure. So it sounds like one of the biggest advantages is it actually takes a non-cash asset and makes it a lot more usable and a lot more flexible with a lot less work to convert it, because that conversion's already been done. Now, what am I going to do with the proceeds from
Exactly. Yeah. Sure. And so, like in one of the cases there that could be, really helpful is, say you have a couple that owns some rental property and one or the other is the one that does most of the work with it, the maintenance, the finding tenants, et cetera. Well, this is a great way of ensuring that if that person is the one who passes away first, that their surviving spouse isn't going to have to deal with all of those kinds of things that are maybe sort of outside their wheelhouse in terms of management, for example.
Well, it sounds like that could also be used for somebody that has this big company or this corporation, and either from a passing or from the sale of this.
Exactly.
What am I going to do to shelter some of the tax liability that's coming from this thing, as well as continue to support my family and make a charitable gift? So is there any particular group of people that should kind of stay away from these things?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I would say, number one, if you're someone, if charity isn't really what's behind it, I think that's going to limit kind of your interest in it, et cetera. A couple of other pieces to recognize. One is that in doing this is an irrevocable gift, right? And so, whereas with a typical trust, a person could actually pull the assets back out of a trust. In this case, it's irrevocable. So once you've made that gift, it needs to stay there. And similarly, the income stream is set up front, what that income stream is going to be. So if you're thinking that you might need a large amount of assets down the road to buy into a nursing home or something like that, recognize that you won't be able to withdraw a portion there. That's where and at the same time, that's where maybe the combination of a partial gift works, because you can use part of the gift to set up a trust and have a chunk of cash for an upfront need like that. But it needs to be someone, like I said, who, really the underlying piece is someone who is wanting to make a significant gift to charity, particularly, and yet needs income along the way.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, let's say I'm taking a look at what you've given here, and I'm thinking, boy, you know what? This really might be something that I should really check into. What would be my first move? How would I get started of exploring this with you guys?
Yeah. I mean, really, the first thing is just to reach out to us and, talk. We can talk a little bit about the situation. You mentioned the gift annuities, for example. And so one of the things that we really enjoy doing is sitting down with an individual, sitting down with a household and really sort of saying, okay, what are our goals here, right? And then we can talk about how to move forward. We would typically then need to bring in an attorney to actually write the trust document, and we can use the attorney that the donor is used to working with, although we can provide language to assist the attorney, et cetera. But really, it's a matter of reaching out to us, and then we can talk about the asset. We can, that illustration that I showed the slide of a couple minutes ago, we can set that up we can personalize that for each person, because the age of the donor is going to make a little difference on the calculations, those kinds of things. But really, it's a matter of reaching out to us, and then we can sit down and have that conversation about priorities and see if a charitable trust is indeed a great fit for you, like it is for a significant number of people, while I'll also recognize that it might not be for everyone, depending on one's goals.
Sure. Yeah. I know one of the reasons why we so freely recommend people connect with Everence Financial for these type of things is the fact that you're not selling a product. What you end up doing is you're taking a step back and you say, well, tell me a little bit about what God's doing in your life. What is it you'd like to do with your current situation? What would you like to do after you're gone? What about taking care of kids? What about this? What about that? Let's explore all the wealth pockets that you've got. And then let's make sure that this doesn't interfere with this plan or that plan. And so that you have confidence of knowing that the entire scope of your whole financial situation has been considered before any decision is being made. And I think that's invaluable. And so that's why we just adamantly really encourage people that they're thinking about any of these kind of things. Give Everence a call.
And that's
the wheel. You've been doing it forever.
Yeah. And that's one of the things, when I talked earlier about the slides, the wonky slides, I acknowledge that I enjoy digging into the weeds there. We recognize that there's very, very few of us that give primarily because of the tax advantages behind it, right? We give because we care about missions and ministries that have been near and dear to our heart, right? It's just that sometimes there are some tools like this that allow us to be even more generous than we thought, and that's one of the exciting things about working with generous folks. Generous folks are enjoyable to work with, and it's wonderful to help them seek to accomplish their goals when it comes to supporting mission and ministry.
Well, that's great. Well, Lyle, hey, thank you so much for your time and for the information. This has been great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, if you've got any questions or if you'd like to learn more about Everence Financial and some of the other services that they have, you can see their contact information here on the screen. You can also find it in the show notes for this episode on our website or in the description of this YouTube video. On behalf of Lyle Miller, Everence Financial, and Partners in Ministry, I'm Dan Smith saying, hey, thanks for joining us. And until next time, let's get out there and serve as Christ serves.
This has been a presentation of Partners in Ministry, a podcast of Josiah White's Quakerdale Foundation. To learn more and see the show notes for this and other episodes, visit our website. To stay informed of up and coming broadcasts, subscribe to our e-newsletter. To invest in our mission, donate today.